We delve into the dark and twisted tales of real-life crimes that shock communities and leave lasting scars. Today's episode unravels how a mom discovers her 12-year-old son's horrifying secret, ending in a tragic murder. Sandra Anderson, a 38-year-old tech executive, her husband Keith, a 40-year-old software engineer, and their 12-year-old son Billy were known in the community for their active involvement in local events and Billy's academic achievements. Sandra, with her warm smile and infectious laugh, was always the first to volunteer for school functions or neighborhood gatherings. Her colleagues at a prominent Seattle-based tech company admired her dedication and creativity. Keith, more reserved but equally kind, spent his free time coaching Billy's Little League team and tinkering with gadgets in their garage. Billy, a bright-eyed boy with a mop of brown hair, was known for his quick wit and passion for science. On the surface, the Andersons appeared to be the perfect family. Their colonial-style home on C26th Street, with its pristine white exterior and red door, was often admired by passers-by. Neighbors would frequently see the family taking evening walks together, Billy animatedly discussing his latest school project, while his parents listened attentively. However, beneath this veneer of suburban bliss, a darkness was growing, one that would soon shatter the peaceful facade of Bellevue and leave the community reeling in shock and disbelief. The morning of June 15, 2023, began like any other for Sandra. She woke up at 6:30 a.m., prepared breakfast for the family, and saw Keith off to work. Billy, usually eager to start his day, was uncharacteristically slow to get ready for school. Sandra noticed dark circles under his eyes and a slight tremor in his hands as he picked at his cereal. Concerned, she asked, "Are you feeling all right?" To which Billy mumbled a barely audible, "I'm fine," before shuffling off to grab his backpack. As Billy left for school, Sandra couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Her maternal instincts, honed over years of caring for her only child, were on high alert. She decided to work from home that day, telling herself it was to catch up on some reports. Deep down, she knew it was her worry for Billy that kept her rooted to the house. Throughout the morning, Sandra found herself distracted, her thoughts continually drifting to Billy's unusual behavior. She recalled how he had become increasingly withdrawn over the past few months, spending more time alone in his room and less time with his friends. At first, she and Keith had attributed it to typical preteen moodiness. But now, she wondered if there was something more serious at play. Unable to focus on her work, Sandra decided to tidy up Billy's room, hoping the familiar act of motherly care would ease her growing anxiety. As she straightened his desk and picked up scattered clothing, her eyes fell upon Billy's laptop, carelessly left open on his bed. A nagging voice in her head told her to respect her son's privacy, but her concern overrode her hesitation. With trembling fingers, Sandra opened the laptop and began to explore its contents. At first, everything seemed normal: school assignments, favorite games, and social media accounts typical for a boy his age. But as she delved deeper, Sandra's heart began to race. Hidden within a folder, innocuously labeled "Homework," were dozens of disturbing images and videos. Sandra's hands flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp of horror. The content she discovered was beyond anything she could have imagined: graphic depictions of violence, animal cruelty, and even what appeared to be real-life crime scenes. Her mind reeled, unable to process how her sweet, sensitive boy could be involved with such horrifying material. As she scrolled through the files, each more disturbing than the last, Sandra's shock turned to nausea. She stumbled to the bathroom, barely making it in time before emptying the contents of her stomach. Gripping the cold porcelain of the toilet, she tried to make sense of what she had seen. How long had Billy been viewing this material? What effect was it having on him? And most terrifyingly, had he moved beyond viewing to acting out these violent fantasies? With shaking hands, Sandra splashed cold water on her face and stared at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at her seemed a stranger, pale, wide-eyed,
blissfully
with
unaware
fear
of
etched
the
into
darkness
every
that
line
had
of her
taken
face.
root in their community.
She knew she needed to
Sandra
act to
spent the
protect
rest
her
of the
son
day in
and
a
get him
haze of
help.
fear and
But the
indecision.
thought of confronting the reality of what she had discovered
Maybe I should
paralyzed
call
her.
Billy's school counselor.
As Sandra grappled
but
with
what
her
if I'm just
discovery,
overreacting?
life in Bellevue continued
As
its
the hours
peaceful
ticked
rhythm.
by, her anxiety grew,
Neighbors
fed
walked
by
their
worst-case
dogs,
scenarios
joggers made
playing
their
out in
way
her
along
mind.
tree-lined streets, and
Other
children
normalcy.
played in
Hey
nearby
Billy, how was
Robbinswood
school
Park,
today?
She
blissfully
watched him
unaware of the
closely, searching
darkness
for
that had
signs
taken
of the
root in their
boy she
community,
thought she
spent the
knew.
rest of the day
Fine,
in a
Mom.
haze of
Billy,
fear
for
and
his part,
indecision.
seemed oblivious to his
She
mother's
considered
scrutiny,
calling Keith,
retreating to
but
his
couldn't
room
bring
after
herself
dinner,
to
the
voice her
tension was
discovery
palpable.
over the phone.
So, today
She
at
thought
work, we
about
had this
contacting
hilarious
Billy's
incident.
school counselor,
Keith, sensing
but feared the
unease between
repercussions
his
if she
wife
was
and son,
overreacting.
attempted to lighten
As
the
the
mood
hours
with
ticked
jokes and
by,
stories
her
from his
anxiety
day.
grew,
But his
fed by
efforts
worst-case
fell flat in the
scenarios
face of
playing out in her
Sandra's
mind.
distracted responses
When Billy
and
returned
Billy's
home
sullen
from school,
silence.
Sandra
Oh, really?
struggled
That's
to maintain a
interesting.
facade of normalcy.
Can I be excused?
She watched
Sandra's
him
distracted
closely,
responses
searching
and
for
Billy's
signs of the
sullen
boy she
silence
thought
made
she
Keith's
knew.
efforts seem once again
Billy,
into his
for his
room,
part,
Sandra finally
seemed
confided
oblivious
in
to his
Keith.
mother's scrutiny,
Keith, I need to
retreating
tell
to
you
his
something.
room with
I
barely a
found
word.
something disturbing
That night,
on Billy's
as the
page.
family sat down to
In
dinner,
hushed tones,
the tension
she
was
recounted
palpable.
her discovery. Her
Keith,
voice breaking as
sensing
she
the
described
unease
the
between his
disturbing
wife and son,
conflict she had felt.
attempted to lighten the
God,
mood
Sandra.
with jokes
I
and
can't believe
stories from
this.
his day.
Keith listened in
But his
stunned
efforts
silence,
fell
his
flat in the
grown
face of
front Billy
Sandra's
the next
distracted
day.
We
responses
need to
and
talk to
Billy's
him
sullen
with love and
silence.
concern.
After
He
dinner,
needs to
as
know we're
Billy
here to
disappeared
support
once
him.
again into his room,
Yes,
Sandra
and we should
finally
offer him
confided in
professional
Keith.
help too.
That night,
In hushed
each
tones,
lost in
she
their own
recounted her
thoughts and
discovery,
fears for their
her voice
son.
breaking
June
as she
17th
described
dawned
the
bright and
disturbing
clear,
content
a
she had
stark
found.
contrast to the dark
Keith
cloud
listened
hanging
in
over
stunned
the
silence,
Anderson household.
his face growing paler with each word.
Yard, calling Billy's
Together,
name.
they decided to
Billy, where are
confront
you?
Billy the next day.
Neighbors, drawn by the commotion,
They would approach
joined
him
in the
with love
search,
and
calling
concern,
through nearby Kelsey
offering
Creek
support
Park and the
and
surrounding
professional help.
streets.
Billy,
Neither
Billy,
of
can you
them
hear us?
slept that night, each lost in their own thoughts and fears
As
for
the
their
hours
son's
passed
future.
with no sign of Billy,
The next morning,
the Andersons
Saturday,
were forced
June
to contact
17th,
the Bellevue Police
dawned
Department.
bright and clear, a stark contrast to the dark
Arrived
cloud
at their home,
hanging over the
her
Anderson
calm
household,
demeanor a stark contrast to the
blurry-eyed
chaos of
from
the
their
search
sleepless
effort.
night.
It's been 2
They
days
steeled
and we found
themselves for
something
the
on
difficult
Billy's laptop.
conversation ahead.
Detective Chen
But
listened
as the
intently
morning
as
wore
Sandra
on,
and Keith
Billy
recounted
failed
the
to
events of the
emerge
past
from
2
his room.
days, including
Knocks
Sandra's
on his door
disturbing
went
discovery
unanswered.
on Billy's laptop.
A growing
just want
sense
him
of
back,
dread settled
safe and
over
sound.
Sandra
The
as she
detective's
used the
expression
spare
remained
key to
neutral,
unlock
but
Billy's
her
door.
eyes betrayed a flicker of
The
concern
room was
as she
empty.
absorbed the information.
The window was open.
Scoured
A note
the air
lay
while
on the
volunteers
meticulously made
distributed
bed.
flyers with Billy's
With
picture
trembling
throughout
hands,
Bellevue and
Sandra
neighboring cities.
unfolded the paper and read the words that would forever change their lives.
Local news stations
I'm
picked up
sorry.
the case,
I can't do
broadcasting
this
Billy's
anymore.
image and the details
Don't
of
try
his
to find me.
disappearance across the Seattle
Panic set in
metropolitan area.
immediately. Sandra
Billy.
and Keith frantically
The
searched the
Anderson
house
home
and
became
yard,
a hub of activity,
calling Billy's name.
with police officers coming
Neighbors,
and going,
drawn by the
friends and
commotion,
neighbors bringing
joined in the
food and
search,
offering support,
calling through
and
nearby
reporters
Kelsey
camped
Creek
out on the
Park
street,
and the
hoping for any
surrounding
updates
streets.
on the case.
As the hours
Interviews,
passed with no
searches,
sign
and
of Billy,
sleepless nights.
the
They took
Andersons were
leave from
forced to
their jobs,
contact the
dedicating
Bellevue
every
Police
waking
Department.
moment to finding
Detective
their son.
Laura Chen,
The strain
a
began to
seasoned
show.
investigator with the Missing
Sandra lost
Persons
weight.
Unit,
Her once
arrived at their
vibrant
home.
personality
Her
dulled by
calm
worry and
demeanor
lack
a
of
stark
sleep.
contrast to the
Keith,
chaos
trying
of the
to be
search
strong for
effort.
his wife, retreated
Detective
into
Chen
himself,
listened
spending hours
intently
poring
as
over
Sandra and
maps and
Keith
online
recounted the
forums,
events of the
searching for
past
any
2
clue that
days,
might lead them to
including Sandra's disturbing discovery on Billy's laptop.
As
The
the
detective's
investigation
expression
progressed,
remained neutral,
Detective Chen and
but her
team
eyes
delved
betrayed a
deeper
flicker
into
of
Billy's
concern
life.
as she
They
absorbed
interviewed
the
his
information.
teachers, classmates, and the
As
parents
night
of his
fell,
friends.
the
A
search for
picture
Billy
began to emerge of a
intensified.
boy who, despite his
Police
outward success,
officers scoured
had
the
been
area,
struggling
while
internally for
volunteers
some time.
distributed flyers
Billy's
with
teachers
Billy's
reported
picture
a recent
throughout
decline in
Bellevue
his
and
grades
neighboring
and
cities.
participation in class.
Local
Some of
news
his
stations
classmates
picked up the
mentioned that he had
case,
become increasingly
broadcasting Billy's
isolated,
image
often
and the
sitting alone
details
at
of his
lunch and
disappearance
declining
across the
invitations to
Seattle
social
metropolitan area.
One friend, speaking
Days
confidentially
turned
to
into
the police,
weeks, and still,
revealed that Billy
there was
had
no
recently
sign of
confided
Billy.
in him about
The
having
Anderson
dark
home
thoughts,
became a
but had
hub of
sworn him
activity,
to secrecy.
with police officers coming coming and going,
fears.
friends and
The
neighbors
disturbing
bringing food
content
and
on Billy's
offering
laptop
support,
was extensive,
and reporters
dating back
camped
several
out on the
months.
street,
They also
hoping for
uncovered
any
evidence of
updates on the
Billy's
case.
involvement in online forums
Sandra and
dedicated
Keith's
to
lives
extreme
became a
and
blur
violent
of police
content.
interviews,
The
searches,
implications
and
were
sleepless
chilling.
nights.
Not only had Billy
They took
been
leave from
consuming
their
this
jobs,
material, but
dedicating
he had
every
also
waking
been
moment
actively
to finding
engaging
their
with
son.
others who shared these
The strain
interests.
began to show. Sandra lost weight, her once
Every
vibrant
detail of
personality
Billy's
dulled by
disappearance.
worry and lack of sleep.
Online sleuths
Keith,
combed through social
trying to be
media
strong
for
for his
clues,
wife,
and armchair
retreated
detectives
into
offered their
himself,
theories on what
spending
might have
hours
happened to the
poring over
12-year-old.
maps and online forums. searching
began to
for
show
any
cracks
clue
under
that
the
might
pressure.
lead them to
We
Billy.
argued frequently,
As the
each blaming
investigation
ourselves
progressed,
and sometimes
Detective
each
Chen
other for
and
not
her
noticing
team
Billy's
delved
struggles
deeper
sooner.
into Billy's life.
Friends and family rallied
They interviewed
around
his
them,
teachers,
but the couple found
classmates,
themselves
and the parents of his
increasingly
friends.
isolated in their grief and
A picture
fear.
began to emerge of a boy who, despite his outward success,
Then,
had been
on a
struggling
sweltering
internally
August
for some
afternoon,
time.
nearly 2 months
Billy's
after
teachers
Billy's
reported a
disappearance,
recent decline
a
in his
breakthrough
grades
came
and
from an
participation in
unexpected
class.
source.
Some of his
hiker in the
classmates
remote
mentioned
areas
that
of
he
the
had become
Cascade
increasingly
Mountains, about
isolated,
an hour east of
often
Bellevue,
sitting alone at lunch
stumbled
and
upon an
declining
abandoned
invitations to
campsite.
social events.
Among
One
the
friend,
detritus of wrappers
speaking
and empty
confidentially
water
to the
bottles,
police,
he found a
revealed that
backpack
Billy had
containing a
recently
school ID
confided in
card
him
bearing
about
Billy's
having
name.
dark thoughts, but had sworn him to secrecy.
The
The digital
discovery
forensics team
reignited the
assigned
search
to the
efforts.
case confirmed
Police
Sandra's
and
worst
volunteer
fears.
search and rescue
The
teams
disturbing
combed the
content
dense
on Billy's
forest,
laptop was
battling
extensive,
rough terrain and
dating
summer
back
heat.
several months.
Helicopters
They also
circled
uncovered
overhead,
evidence of Billy's
their spotlights
involvement in
piercing the
online
canopy of
forums
trees,
dedicated to extreme
searching
and
for any
violent
sign of the
content.
missing boy.
The implications
On
were
the third
chilling.
day of the renewed
Not only
search,
had Billy been
as hope was
consuming this
beginning to fade
material,
once again,
but he had
a
also been
canine unit
actively
picked up a
engaging
scent.
with others who shared
Following
these
the dog's
interests.
lead,
As the
searchers
summer
pushed
wore on,
deeper into the
the
forest,
case of the missing
eventually
Bellevue
coming to
boy
shelter,
captured national
a tarp
attention.
stretched